we have gathered the industry's leading marketers to outline the year ahead and how to make your voice heard across platforms and the media in 2022. Our moderator today is Andrea Badiola Mateos, Head of Finance Magnates Cyprus. Our panelists will introduce themselves in a moment, though I'll give them a brief introduction first. We have here today Martyna Borys-Liszka, Account Director at YAP Global, Sarafina Wolde Gabriel, VP of Strategy of Income Access, Rachel Varley, Senior Industry Manager, Financial Trading at Google, Ian Sims, founder of Rightlander, and Andrew Warden, Chief Marketing Officer of Semrush. Let's give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to all of our speakers. I'm hoping this is going to be a very engaging panel. Over here, we have a broad range of experts, top experts from the marketing industry. So we're going to get right into it so we can be on time. So I'm going to go straight ahead with the questions. We're going to try to have about 5 minutes at the end for questions, but I can't promise that. So right ahead with the questions. My first one is actually probably one that you don't hear as much, because usually when we talk about marketing, we always focus on retail marketing. But one of the biggest challenges that we have found on the marketing side of things, it has actually been business to business, B2B. So how do you utilize social media and other channels for B2B promotion marketing? Who wants to take it first? Okay,
so much for experts.
I'm happy to jump in.
There you go, Andrew. Thank you.
So what I'll do is I'll tie a couple of different themes here together, right? So I think the first thing is, because I think there was another question on your list as well about brand voice, but you know the key for social media presence, I think especially when it comes to B2B and your overall brand strategy, is you absolutely have to focus on the human side of the equation. And I think this is something that, you know, for at least the last 10 years, we've been saying at many conferences like this, we've been saying, forget about product features and benefits, it's always about the pain that you're solving for customers. But I think especially given the global shared experience of the last couple of years, this is the moment for B2B brands and actually B2B marketers to really, I would say, over pivot on the human element of marketing, telling real stories about how your product or your service is actually changing the life of your customer. That's something that we're doing at Semrush right now, and we're seeing a lot of data around.
So would you say that for B2B companies, it's less about the actual performance of the campaign and it's more about the awareness that generates?
I actually think that's a common misconception actually, that you can if you're going to be human, you might not be able to actually return a result or get an ROI on a campaign. Actually we've been seeing a tremendous result with that kind of strategy lately. I guess I'm just saying that this is really the moment for B2B brands and brand managers, advertisers, social media managers to step into that space that so many have actually wanted to step into before, but might have been told actually by CMOs even that might not return. And I think that's something that people should be really courageous about at this given moment in time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Andrew. Do you guys agree or have a different opinion?
I'd like to chip in from a compliance angle, because that's basically my background is marketing compliance, and Rightlander looks after marketing compliance from an affiliate and branding perspective. And I think while the story thing is obviously maps on quite nicely to what's happening with the world at the moment and social media and the way things work, there's also a danger there that if that gets passed on to marketing partners, they take it too far. Because we see a lot of instances where, particularly in financial trading, where affiliates and influencers are standing in front of flash houses, big Lamborghinis, lots of bling, explaining how this has changed their lives. And it's common sense that the regulators will want to clamp down on that. So I think telling a story is great, but I think it needs to be moderated, and I think it needs to be respectful of the fact that people, when they see the sign of money, tend to overreact and make decisions that perhaps aren't the right decisions.
Thank you. The second question is related to the gamification that it has happened in the finance industry to a certain extent. We just heard earlier today in the leaders panel about the CEOs mentioning that they do want to tap into this sector of traders that tend to be a little bit more of gamers, gamblers, etc. But there is a diverse range of opinions as to how this is conducted, which applies into the compliance that you were mentioning, Ewan. But there is a lot of other things that are implied as to how can you work with a specific audience, maintain the compliance of it all, and still be profitable. So what's your take on how the industry is trying to include this sector of the audience?
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. I think the thing with, when we look at social media, what is social media for? Is it to engage your audience? Is it to build a relationship? Is it for continuity? Or is it just a push marketing mean? There's a lot of noise in social media. It's very hard to decipher who's honest, who's not, what should I believe, what shouldn't I? And when you bring the millennials into it, they probably consume 60 to 70% of their content on social media. So a big thing that, as a financial institution or a broker needs to do is you need to, first of all, personalize that content to this audience. So yes, they might be in it for fun and not necessarily for a big professional investment, or they could be in it to try and make money quick, as a youngster would, So it's really about knowing what kind of content you need to be putting in forward for these guys that A, is compliant, but also B, is more relevant to their behavior.
Thank you, Sarafina.
I tend to agree with this, and I'm coming from YAP Global, which is a PR agency. We specialize in helping crypto and decentralized finance companies build the trust. And one of the things that we are seeing is that, yes, there is a lot of weird and scammy coins here and there, and there's a lot of influencers, TikTokers on social media, and people with pictures of Lamborghini trying to kind of be, come to crypto and all this money. And what we try to do with PR is actually earn the trust through the third-party mediums like media, publications, press coverage, because that's, way much more trustworthy source of information. And, our clients, they don't really want to pay an influencer to bump their coin or the project up. And I think that's a really interesting trend now in crypto, that actually those influencers are not in high demand as they were like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But I guess coming back to your question about gamification, that's again, I guess for financial services, and that's kind of my background, and fintech, there's a lot to learn from gamification in terms of how to engage and keep customers engaged. So I think there is like vast opportunities that you can utilize gamification for traditional finance, with things like changing behaviors for savings or financial literacy. We've seen that with more of the neobanks, maybe, perhaps. I don't know if you guys agree, but they have been doing quite well with the more friendly UX and kind of earning the points for doing good or for doing great against your financial goals. And I think that's really, it's really refreshing. And I think, again, because we are moving into the e-commerce and we stay online all the time, I think it's important that this UX kind of corresponds nicely with what people are expecting.
I think I would just add a little bit more onto the, to continue on the gamification vibe. I think speaking about millennials, right? It's for me, I like to say zillennials, right? Because now we're in this kind of strange hybrid place between. Gosh, 10 years ago we were saying digital natives, right? But so for me, gamification is everywhere. If you are a teenager or if you're 21 right now, it is already embedded into the UX UI of most engagements, and I'd say financial services is still ripe for that. Of course, need to be compliant, but exactly what you just said about encouraging and actually driving consumer behavior. even these points being awarded for automating savings for £1.50 a week every pay, whatever the increment is. I actually think that that's something that people should be considering as a must-have, not a nice-to-have when it comes to the budgeting cycle. Yeah.
There's actually a lot that has been brought up about how the technology should be evolving in order to include all of these kind of they don't want to call it gambling, but more like gaming style, UX friendly, more approachable, simplified kinds of trading so that anybody could access it, and especially somebody that is tech savvy, like the newer generations, they would find it not only easy to use, but attractive at the same time, and would push the use of the services over other ones.
I would probably just add as well that we need to be really careful about using buzzwords within the industry. It's obviously, you've spoken a lot about compliance, and it's an incredibly sensitive category. For us, I would say our biggest focus is using learnings from other industries, be it gaming, be it gambling, whatever you want to do, and taking the learnings and figuring out how it's right for our business, how it's right for our industry, versus taking on the entire audience of what may be gaming or what may be gambling and trying to go after them. So I'd just be really conscious of how we take learnings from industries, but it doesn't mean we have to fundamentally change our business and our audience to try and capture those. Ultimately, it's a really risky category to be in. If you're going to do trading, it comes with a massive risk warning. We don't want to be going after, and we don't allow us to go after under 18. So we do need to be really conscious of that as well.
I think I'd add to that. So I was a gambling affiliate for 12 years, so I've been very involved in that industry. I'm very familiar with the fact that there's kind of two types of gambler. And gamification appeals to the type of gambler that needs rewards. So the brain has this reward element, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and I won't teach you all about that, I'm sure. But essentially, gamification feeds that element of the brain and keeps you involved in what's going on. But there's another type of gambler who is just purely in it to win as much as possible and get out, and the gamification doesn't really matter. It's less about that. So I think from a trading perspective, I actually don't see gamification as a bad thing, as long as it stays on the right side of compliance, at the risk of putting a policeman's hat on every 5 minutes. But I think it's actually not a bad thing, because it makes people, it's attracting the right type of person into that environment rather than the wrong type, because the other type, the more win type, tends to be the more addictive personality.
And this type of profile that you're actually describing is much more engaged in social media than it would be in other channels. So do you think that social media in general is somehow enabling this kind of persona to buy more into the services of financial services that at the end of the day need to manage the risk in a more strict way, and they need to use services like yours to make sure that compliance is being maintained throughout all of these affiliates that they use, because social media is one of the main channels that they use it for. So where do you see these going in the next couple of years, let's say, when it comes to the section of gamblers, gaming, social media, all of this democratization?
From a compliance perspective, I'm not a fan of social media, and I'm not a fan of mixing business with social media. I've never been comfortable with that. But a lot of people do it. It's successful. You've got the influencer marketing. I get all that. It's just not something I'm a great fan of. But I think regulation is common sense, and compliance, a lot of it is common sense. So what they're trying to do is stop someone misleading a consumer or telling them something exists when it doesn't, or they can do something that they can't very easily, and not really balancing the risks. So I don't think there's anything wrong with getting messages over on social media, providing that they're balanced. But I think we'll see much more regulation in that space. If you look at the way the gambling industry has regulated and compare it to how the finance industry is regulated, it's quite interesting, because the finance regulation preceded gambling regulation. When you had credit cards and all this stuff out there, it kind of really hammered down, and affiliates and publishers went down to a sort of manageable level. Then you had gambling come in, the regulation there kind of started to follow suit. You could see what was happening. It was just following this common sense pattern. And now we've got this area of trading which is kind of following behind it, and you can just see where it's going to go. And especially with social media and the younger ages getting involved, there's only one thing that can happen. So I think it has to be, it's part of a larger marketing strategy, social media, but I think it's dangerous to put too many eggs in one basket.
And I wouldn't even call it a counter necessarily, Ian, but I think it's really fascinating to me even still. the idea that work could be separate from social, separate from digital. Again, it depends on whom you speak with, right? But since we were talking about Gen Z or Zillennials, there's virtually no distinction, right? And I think that no matter if you're in financial services or you're in any category for that matter, again, I actually really appreciate the honest perspective because I share some of it as well, but whether we like it or not, this is how today's generation, the next generation, and after that, and we don't even know what the next 20 years holds for technology, right? The pace everything goes. So I think, the idea of linking in gamification, ensuring that you have a social media strategy that is not only about telling stories, but about driving conversions, right? And doing it in a compliant way, for me, again, is a must-have, yeah.
And I guess I totally agree here with you, Andrew. In crypto, again, that's a really interesting one because, as a PR advisors or consultants, we spend a lot of time with our clients just making sure that the messages are really solid and simple, and there is no room for assumption or kind of miscommunication, and that just extends to owned channels. So as much as I work on kind of earned media side of things, so making sure that the key messages to media are proper and simple and easy to understand and not misleading, that extends to their own channels and needs to be constantly reviewed. And get kind of external advice on what you can and cannot advertise. I don't know if you guys seen. There is this ad in London Underground about like Flocky coin, and that's a pretty aggressive, pushy advertisement, and something that here at YAP Global we are not approve of, and I think the kind of relevant industry bodies are already looking into that and seeing whether that's not too aggressive language. And again, that should, whatever is an ad, that definitely will be extended to social media. And I agree with Andrew. I think because of the coronavirus, that kind of e-commerce and living in digital world has really escalated. But for what I've been hearing, we are not going back to what it was before the pandemic. So actually, people are quite comfortable with living in the digital world. I don't want to throw another buzzword, but metaverse. Hey, that's gonna escalate quickly as well, in my opinion, anyway.
Thank you, Martyna. So linked to that, considering that we're moving towards a more digitalized world, and we don't even know what's going to come next. Like Andrea is saying, like what will we be doing in 20 years? What will our kids be doing in 10? It's like it's unthinkable for us right now. But what we know is that it's going towards digital. So with all the channels that we currently have available for marketing that become more and more every day, how do you create a distinct brand that stands out? How do you utilize these channels in a way that you don't get spread out, on scarce and get lost in all of it?
So I wanted to jump in on this one straight off the bat. So in terms of, we're about to be living in a digital world or a metaverse, or it's happening now. It's already happened, right? Whether you like the term or not, metaverse, right? This is what's happening right now. I think, and again, I didn't plug Semrush, right? But I think that there's an interesting point of discussion in terms of Semrush being around effectively for the last 13 years. Our business has grown exponentially since the last 2 years. This almost forced move to digital, right? We effectively help marketers and small business owners and enterprises of all sizes be visible online and to make online marketing easier across virtually every digital channel. And so your question around how do you create a brand voice or a tone of voice and get an effective message out across all of these different channels, not least social, is a very, 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 very complex question and an answer. In brief, I would say, this is incredibly topical right now. In the UK alone, in 2021, there's been a 200% increase in search volume. This is one of the things Semrush can offer, in terms of actually people literally looking up how to construct a brand voice, right? And I have to check my cheat sheet, but there's another data point, I believe. What is brand voice is 200% up this year. How to develop a brand voice up 100%. And again, the comment I made when we opened, what is tracking more and more for brands today, and I would argue it would be the same exact thing for a financial services company. You have to appear at least as authentic. You have to project an image of, and this is where you'll be mad at me for buzzwords, but it's like, that you have to project the ESG movement. You have to project caring about, giving a damn about the environment, giving a lot of concern to all types of things that are inclusive in nature. But actually, at the end of the day, it's about being genuine and being human in your communication, and whether that's really striking photography of people in their everyday lives using retail products in financial services, fine, right? It could be a little bit more aggressive with gamification. It could be more fun, could be more lighthearted. You could also tell a story with someone, the road to saving £1,000. What does that mean for Ellie? Pick your favorite character, right? The point is, you have to. We're just seeing this more and more in the data that we have. That being more, and I would say over pivoting even more than we would like to, being more aggressive on being a human front, that's really at the heart of the brand tone. And the last thing I'd say is it's my 9th week at Semrush, so I'm actually new to the company, and I'm learning actually from our brand team. It's the first time I've seen it where actually the 40 or 50 folks in our brand team are literally living our brand values. I've never seen anything like it. Perhaps at Google you have this. I'm sure. Actually, I know you do. But having that, it's literally the idea of the genuine brand, and it's radiating throughout the organization, and then to our customers, of course, through advertising. It's really, really quite compelling. That's a long answer. Sorry.
So if I had to summarize it, I would say look inwards, see what makes you special, unique, and then utilize that across all the channels. And Semrush can help with that.
Yes.
Rachel, I can see you want to. Okay, Martyna, Rachel.
I was just going to add as well that I think, yes, look internally, but don't feel that you need to go and be on every single platform that suddenly exists. Like, some of them you also can't be on for regulatory reasons. I think if you can take what you spoke to, which is how do you be genuine, what are your values, what really are your values once you've thought about what your values are, and then identify how you're going to take that message to market across the different platforms, that would be how I typically advise clients. And we also don't send the same message on every single channel. We're very specific that if you're talking to someone on an Instagram, it should be different creative. It should be a slightly different message to those people that you're talking to on YouTube. They're different platforms with different audiences for a reason, and you need to figure out how to tap into that. The other thing I would suggest as well is look at what other people are doing, right? Like, a lot of the times with our clients, we'll say, well, who are you proud of? Who do you wish you were? Which campaign do you really love? And what is it about that campaign that gets you excited? And then intrinsic that, and then push it back out from your company's perspective. Because I think at the moment we're going to continue to see, I think your question was really funny, what are we going to do with digital? We've done that for the last 10 years. We're so beyond what are we going to do with digital. We're all in it, and it's just a no-brainer. It's how do we keep up with it? I think the shift over the last couple of years is tremendous. The consumer is no longer in this linear road to, I've seen this, okay, now I'm going to convert. They get confused, they get distracted, that someone pings them, they go off and get a coffee. It just isn't that way. This whole idea of decoding decisions and figuring out what you're going through, what are you figuring out, how do you take your time, what's the right thing for you, that's going to continue. It's not going to become easier. It's going to become more clouded. It's going to become busier. So it's for you as a company or for you as a brand to cut through with what your voice is, and that message at that moment for the client or for your potential consumer is really what you've got to, in my opinion, what you've got to refine early on.
And I think that's a great takeaway as well. One thing that especially leapt up to me is that the buyer journey has yet again been like holistically disrupted, because this is very profound, right? It's like, you know, you're in the middle of a call, and this includes a Gen Z, right? This includes a 21-year-old or a 20, I mean, anything above 18, you know. But sure, you know, but in all seriousness, it's you know, people, it's all over the board, like you say.
That makes me think, though, you know, for the people that are on our side of the marketing, you know, not talking about our clients trying to reach their clients, but on the B2B side, that makes it so much harder to track the performance of anything, because it seems to be tending more towards the awareness and the actual presence, because the flow of the client is not straightforward anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a really big misconception that you need to have brand or you need to have performance. I really wish we'd kind of forgotten those two things. They work together. There's a reason we talk a lot about awareness. There's a reason you need to drive a brand. It's because it's part of the path to purchase. You don't just see a brand. Like I always say, any client that comes to me goes, I really want to do YouTube. I really want to drive conversions. My CMO really wants us. I'm like, hey, well, don't do it, because it's not going to do that in 3 weeks. Like, it's a part of a longer journey. Like, if you want to drive conversions, go and do search. If you want to build up a brand and you want to build up a persona and you want to try and help take those clients on a journey, then fine, build a brand. But take the time to figure out what that brand is and how comfortable you are with that payback in 2 years, or that payback in 4 years, or that payback in a slightly different way. Are you measuring uplift? Are you measuring engagement? What is it that you're doing that makes you feel comfortable? And then pitch that to the board. Don't pitch the conversion story, because I think you'll find it really difficult over the next few years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just one more thing too, because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there is this misconception that brand is brand awareness, and that even it may take I mean, it certainly does. There's a longer tail, but I can tell you at Semrush, I believe, you know, our brand team, and this is a B2B play. You know, we're a pure B2B company. We can attribute more than 45% of our new subscriptions to brand activity, which most people say, well, hang on, that's performance marketing and that's pure digital plays. It's like, no, we have very clear, measurable results from long tail brand activity. So it's up to you to actually figure out what you want to say, just as you said, Rachel, right? And going out to market.
Thank you. Martyna, I guess that this is linked to your PR activities and, you know, the way that you present your brand out there, and how do you track what's happening, you know, with all of that? Like, how do you deal with your clients when they come and say, okay, we want to do PR, but what am I going to get from it?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's very similar. Like, PR needs to be strategic. You need to know why you are going for PR, and sometimes, you know, I have to sit down with my clients and say, hey, you don't need PR, you need you know, marketing campaign, or maybe you need you know, sales or community building exercising. So it's yeah, it needs to be strategic. But what PR helps with, again, and is that, you know, earned coverage. So, you know, it's been kind of you know, proven that for certain activities or brand building or building the trust, very important in crypto space, is that, you know, the earned coverage will give you that that extra boost when it comes to building the trust. It's most trusted when you see third party talking about it, and media has been seen as a, you know, kind of a voice that is not is independent. So that's why clients come to us to get kind of this third-party endorsement. Does this answer your question? Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, it's okay. It does. Ian, I see that you want to answer something.
I was just going to say endorsements. Obviously, we all know a personal endorsement is very good, but if you look at the United States at the moment, there's actually a regulation out there that says you can't have testimonials, endorsements within the financial space for your brand. It's one of the things that we look very closely for, looking for on affiliate sites. And I can see that might gradually seep into other areas. So I think I'm totally for that. I think endorsements are brilliant, but it might come back to bite you later, possibly.
Yeah, and I don't, well, maybe I've used the wrong word here. It's not so much an endorsement, but it's more a storytelling. So, you know, and, you know, you won't see a reputable publication writing a piece, a song and dance about one company for no reason whatsoever. That's paid activity usually. So we try to tell the stories about, you know, why a certain product or offering matters for the wider kind of industry, and within that kind of try and place our clients where they can contribute meaningfully to the debate. So it's more through that means rather than trying to bribe journalists to write
I mean, this is potentially where gamification can help, isn't it? Because if you can get good gamification, you get people talking about it and saying, this is really good because I get to do A, B, and C. So I get where you're coming from. Yeah, totally.
I was just going to add that I agree with all my colleagues, and also that's why I believe affiliate marketing is the best invention ever, because when you're a brand, there's nothing better than having somebody else selling your brand for you or your voice. So, coming back to our context here, we see a lot of affiliates that will use tutorials on how to trade, or just really good quality content that you put out there. And some of them are really good at search. Some of them are really good in social media. Some of them are really good at organic stuff. So, they come at such a wide range, or even offline marketing. So, yeah, I totally agree with everything here. And really, B2B branding is all about telling your story and having others tell that story so that you personalize that content that you're putting out there.
One thing we are doing in the crypto space as well is actually working on a lot of educational content and trying to, pitch to media explainers. And that has nothing to do. And sometimes I speak to clients and I'm like, look, this term needs to demystifying, like we tell me more about it, and we would write piece of content and work with journalists on just to make sure it's a kind of a reliable piece of information, and then it won't mention a product once, but it would have an offer, and that's very powerful because then people and we had examples when people come back to the author of the article, which happens to be a client, and be like, you're so knowledgeable about this space and really enjoyed that article, and that builds the trust that you need in that space. So I think this is one of the tactics. And with content like this, actually, that doesn't have a shelf life. So you can then use that piece of content and kind of push on your channels as maybe put some paid behind it. Like I'm not an expert on that side of things, but we seen Facebook ads with. Kind of brands are utilizing their coverage. They got like a month or 2 months, 3 months ago, and kind of push it that way. And some of this contents, if it's not a news story, you can utilize kind of long-winded as a part of your marketing push.
I think a key word there could be the word authority. I think if you can prove you're an authority in any space, certainly in the gambling space, it was a huge thing. Doesn't matter what you're talking about. If people believe what you're saying and come back to you, then that's as good brand building as you can possibly do.
It takes time, though, to build a brand, to actually raise the awareness, the trust. All of this is not something that can be achieved from 1 month to the next. When somebody comes and says, should I do branding? Should I do awareness? Should I do SEO? Should I do social media? Should I do performance? And like they shoot at you all of these words, and you try to explain to them, especially on the B2B arena, but also on the B2C, because there's so many actors out there that are. When we're talking about fintech, we mentioned brokers, right? So they're trying to target the everyday individual that is walking on the street. So it's a global approach, and there is so many providers of these services out there. So they want to stand out, and they say, okay, so what should we do at what level? How much of each? Like, should we focus on SEO? Should we focus on performance? So I think it has gone in waves, and please give me your input as to what do you think that it has been the trend, because maybe we'll have different angles to it. But at the beginning, it was very much on the SEO and branding. Then it went more into media buying on performance, PPC, all of this. Then it was more on the PR communication side of things, and now I think that everybody's just lost. They don't. It's about to see what's next. Social media is still a hit, but please give me your input as to do you agree with this progression, or do you have a different view of it?
I was going to say, going back to what Rachel said, I think we need to move away from the notion of you need to be everywhere. I think you need to step back and go, first of all, you need to have a holistic approach to your marketing. And you also need to know who's your audience, because depending on where that audience is will determine where you go. So yes, with technology, there's so many platforms out there, you can't even keep track of it anymore. If you're trying to just spread yourself so thin and be everywhere, you're going to lose the message. And more importantly, I mean, the really key word here is consistency. You're not going to be able to consistently keep up on every single platform with your message if you try to do it that way. So just go back, take a step back and go, who am I targeting? What medium do they consume? How do they like to consume it? I think one of the big advantages in marketing is if you know what your end user is looking for, it makes it a little bit easier. So for example, if I trust you and I'll tell you, oh, my favorite football team is Arsenal, then you put out Arsenal content, I'm going to come and read it. I'm going to come every single day and I'll see it. But I have to build that trust. I have to build the relationship. And then I will tell you where I want it. Do I want it on Twitter? Do I want it on TikTok? Do I want it on LinkedIn? Where do I want it? So that's really, I go back to what Rachel said, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. You can't try to be everything everywhere. And it's you'll just waste a lot of money.
Waste a lot of money and time. The only thing I would add is just be really careful about who you think your audience is. Because I think one thing that the pandemic has taught us, and I don't want to keep talking about the pandemic, but it has shifted us quite fast, is that you don't know who your audience is. You don't know what that person wants, really. Like, yes, you can assume that a trader is going to be, as we always assume, 45 to 60-year-old male, probably lives in London, blah, blah, blah. You can fill in the rest of the gaps. But actually, the great thing about some of the gamification that you talked in is actually that world is open to everyone. As long as you're willing to take the risk and you're kind of being safe and you're trying to learn, there's no reason that you couldn't be a female with 2 kids and living in Manchester. It's the only place I could think of. I'm from Manchester originally. So I just would, I get it. I think, yes, you need to know who you're going after, but I think that's back to your brand message. Like, who are you? And then push the message out. I think what's really interesting at the moment, and a lot of what we're focused on, is actually automation, because you can't, as one individual or one marketing team, think of all of this. It's completely unreasonable. But what you can do is use the tools that are available to let the system find those people for you. If you plug in, this is what I'm willing to pay, this is my creative, this is the stuff I have to have because it's risk warnings or whatever else, then allowing the system to find those people using those signals, be it across Twitter, Facebook, Google, whatever it may be. I keep saying TikTok, but apparently I'm too old for that. TikTok. That's kind of what you want to do, I would say, versus trying to figure out yourself, who should it be? Because I think that was 5 years ago. I think that was the old way of marketing.
5 years is like a lifetime these days. So.
The last thing I would add as well is that just to get back, going back to your original question around, should we be spending time on SEO? Should we be spending time on organic? There's obviously the routes, and then there's the platform, right? The platforms that we need to market on, and we need to actually choose where not to be. I mean, it's strategies usually, people don't, it's not very popular, but people forget that strategy is about saying no to several things. But I think that, for those who are, because I think I'll speak for us as a group, I think we have a pretty, we've got some moxie when it comes to marketing. So I think I just wanted to maybe spell it out a little bit for folks who are not so in the marketing soup, right? I mean, at a highest level, the Arsenal example in terms of organic content, this is what this type or this mode or this channel certainly yields the most, but it takes time, right? It takes 2 years. That's the same category as brand building. SEO and optimization you can't really do until you actually have some content to pivot on or some keywords to actually float up. So I guess the point I would make is that there are at any given time 15 to 20 different buzzwords in terms of, or the areas that you should be marketing in. Just telling you the way historically I've done that is I just look at the 5 year or 3 or 5 year view and say, for the first 2 years, we're going to focus the teams on organic content. We know it's going to take longer. We know we're going to spend more money. But then in years 2 to 3, we're going to start optimizing for SEO. And then once we actually start to get some inertia, then we're going to spend a little bit more money than we feel comfortable with on paid and others. So, it's just, again, that blueprint is not, it's not consistent across all industries, but most people don't step back to actually think, why am I doing SEO? Why am I doing organic? And how long is it going to take,
I'd probably flip that around and try and figure out what are the paid channels you want to be on. I'm not saying it has to be Google, obviously some of the search terms are super expensive and it has to work for you. But I think you can spend a lot of time figuring out organically what's the content, what's the videos, who do you want to speak to, what do you want to shoot, and actually never really reach anyone. Because ultimately, you're going to have to pay to push stuff out, right? People aren't always just going to find you. That is so much clutter. Like, you talk to SEO, yeah, especially with regulation, you want to be great at it, but all the paid stuff sits above it. So we know where the eyes are, right? So if you want people to, it doesn't have to be that you're on every single keyword that possibly exists, but figure out what works for you. What are the keywords that are right for your brand or your business, and then try and start to capitalize on those and iterate, right? I don't sit there and say to a client, here's 1,000 keywords I'll speak to in a year. I say, let's test it. Let's test it together. And it might be that these 10 don't work, but these 990, wow, bad math, 990 really do work for you. And so that's where we want to double down on. So it's just also testing what is working for you and figuring out, to your point, say no to some stuff, but make sure that you've got, I think if you were to just do organic, it might take you a really long time, is what I'm saying.
Going back to, sorry, Martyna.
I was just about to say this is a very useful exercise for PRs. We love having keywords and being able to wave like keywords or align those with key messages for brands. I think that's really important. So again, it's a very holistic approach to what you do and making sure you hit your key messages on different channels.
This is where we actually have a alignment already with 3 people on the panel. You know, so you've got keywords. You can go to semrush.com right now and actually search, I believe, unless I'm corrected, you can search for free actually on a certain number of keywords to see just how those track. That's one of our, long-standing benefits. Sorry, Ian.
You could also go on Google Trends. As a heads up.
You could.
It's
Let's
also
keep it
free.
Just so you know.
You could.
Little bit of gentle competition. I mean, I don't really care. Go on whatever you want, whatever works for you, but it also does exist. One other thing I did want to say is on the path to purchase piece, because we spoke about it a bit before and I forgot, if you search on Think with Google, there are so many articles that help you understand that really short piece that I gave you. It's a really big narrative that's being spoken about at the moment. So if you do want to understand more about it, it was not written by me. This is not a plug by me. I personally just find it really interesting. Think with Google, decoding decisions is a really interesting path to purchase narrative that might help.
I'm actually going to link back a little bit to something you said in one of the answers. You mentioned automation, like, leave some part to automation to decide for you and all of this. So it's actually related to the client-centric approach when you're a big company. So as a B2B or a B2C company, like, how do you manage the whole client-centric approach when you're a global brand and you're targeting globally? Should you leave it to automation? We don't have much time, so if you can, guys, give me a short answer, whoever wants to take it.
I'll give you 2 words, 3, for however many words, I'll give you 2 points. One is automation. I don't think a lot. I'm only B2C, manage clients that look after B2C, so I don't want to speak on behalf of B2B. Is automation. Automate as much as you can. Push as much data into the system and let it find everything for you. I think the other one I would say, and I think one of you spoke to it earlier, is personalization at scale. So I don't think gone are the days where you can put that same message in front of everyone and it lands really well. It doesn't. You really need to figure out what message at what point needs to go to those right people or the people that you think are right. And then, as I said earlier, if it doesn't work, just change it and iterate it. And the great thing there is you can still automate that, right? You can still have dynamic ads or dynamic creative to help you reach those people at the right time. So personalization and automation.
I would also say the focus on, because I agree, automation is again not future, it's present. If you're not doing it now, you are doing something wrong. Yes, I think that's okay to say. So if you want to get started, I think the biggest thing is actually to outline the business logic. Because again, you can feed the system with all the data, but you have, in order to, especially at scale in a large brand, so just putting my B2B hat on, right? You've got to really take time to invest, work with your customer success teams, work with the market research teams, work to code the systems and to pre-prepare the neural nets, right? Because if you don't invest the time up front, what you get as an output, you'll just be repeating and reinventing it. That's my one point of advice.
And I was going to just add, in addition to personalization, you can use automation for things like your loyalty reward programs. So whether it's B2B or B2C. So if you're looking at B2C, you've got traders that do certain actions. If you've got modern tools that will identify all of that, then you can give your bonuses or your rewards, or or when somebody reaches a milestone, you can automate that. So that's where automation is a really big asset to have.
Technology. Good. Got it. Take note. My last question, because we have a minute and a half left. It's going to be, if you can tell us what, from your expert opinion, you think is going to be the trends within 2022 when it comes to marketing, affiliation, pricing models, etc.
I think two things. One is people are creating their own audience that they can control and market to. So whether it's Telegram or WhatsApp, I mean, the hotel I'm staying at doesn't even have a telephone number now. They just tell you, WhatsApp us at the reception if you want anything. So I think people
that and QR codes.
Yeah, that's it. So I think everyone's gonna, rather than pushing message out to people, I think they're going to want to control that audience and have a dialogue and build relationships with the audience. The second thing I was gonna say is compliance. I think we as marketers are getting more and more conscious of what you can and can't say, because our hands are getting slapped all the time, or the risk of being slapped is high. So most marketing trends, whether it's affiliates, whether it's search, whether it's anything, it's going to happen.
I think that we can expect to see, this is certainly our one of our big beliefs or bets at Semrush. We believe, especially given the acceleration with the pandemic, but furthermore, just the ubiquitous of social and Gen Z or Zillennials, there will be hundreds of millions of marketers on the street. So if any of you gets frustrated when someone's doing a TikTok, in your way as you're walking the pavement, get ready for more of that, right? Because your brand will have probably a 50x or higher in terms of the influential reach of people who are actually recording, creating content, building a subscriber base. That, again, is not the future. It's happening right now.
Martyna?
I'm going to talk about metaverse because I think it's really important. I guess that's something everyone should be looking at because we are focusing on digital platforms, and I think I don't know when that's going to happen, but I know people are buying digital land, and as crazy as this sounds, it's a space that's really growing, and especially in retail, like we've seen some artists doing virtual tours, engaging customers this way, and that's music industry. But I think that's going to happen very soon. With we've seen digital fashion shows in metaverse. People buying land to put the shop so people can buy swag at the events. Like, that's as crazy as this seems. I think there's a huge opportunity for e-retail space and e-commerce in coming years. So I think, maybe look into that. I certainly will.
Thank you. We have run out of time, so I thank you, all the panelists. Thank you for the audience. Please, big round of applause.